you to please I would ask each of you to please unmute and let him know your attendance by saying here or present. Mr. Woosley.
Thank you, Council Chair Bean. Starting with Council Chair. Council Chair Bean, are you present?
Here.
Councilmember Consiglio. Councilmember Consiglio Young.
That's me, the same person.
Councilmember Curtis.
Present.
Councilmember Dalton. Is Councilmember Dalton here? Councilmember Davis.
Here.
Councilmember Johnson.
If that's Mallory Johnson here.
Okay, and Councilmember Jones. Councilmember Sue Jones. Councilmember Lambert.
Here.
Councilmember Littleton.
Here.
And Councilmember Makers.
Here.
Do we have Councilmember McMillan? Is Councilmember McMillan here? How about Councilmember Parker?
Here.
Councilmember Reynolds? Is Councilmember D. Reynolds here? And Councilmember Russell? Is Councilmember Ray Russell here? Do we have Councilmember Scott?
Here.
And Councilmember Van? We have Councilmember Bobby Van. Councilmember Vess?
Here.
Councilmember Senator Paige Wally.
Here.
And Councilmember Woosley. I am here.
Thank you, Secretary Woosley. Do we have a quorum, please?
We do.
Thank you. All right. Members of the council, our first order of business on the agenda is to approve the minutes from the June 6, 2025 meeting. Those minutes were circulated by Ms. Askew. They were circulated a second time yesterday, September 4th, 2025 via email. Are there any corrections to the minutes? If there are no corrections or additions to the minutes, those minutes will be approved as distributed according to the Roberts Rules of Order. No specific vote is needed. Hearing none, seeing none on corrections, those minutes are approved as distributed. Our next order of business on the agenda, item number 4, is our update on the Domestic Violence State Coordinating Council status, which will be provided to us by Ms. Jennifer Eskew.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. As many of you will probably remember, there was an issue where we found out this summer that funding that had been allocated towards having a staff person at the coalition who was responsible for coordinating the council as well as doing a lot of training and monitoring for the BIPS program and hosting the BIPS annual summit, that funding had been lost, cut this year from OCJP, who had then had to pass that funding cut down to the coalition. So as a result, that funding had paid for 85% of Ms. Tina Fox's time. And as a result, we were no longer able to keep that position at the coalition. So we very much miss Tina. However, we were able to figure out a way to make a much smaller percent, try maybe 5% of Brandon's time, our legal director at the coalition, to allow him to continue on with coordination of the council so that the coalition can continue to convene it. What we won't be able to do is the same level of work with the BIPS programs that we had done. Our funding is federal funding, and it comes from the Office of Violence Against Women. And we are not allowed to do activities with that funding that involve perpetrators. So things like going out to making monitoring visits, hosting monthly trainings for BIPS programs, and then doing the annual conference is something that we won't be able to continue to do. However, it is in statute that the DVSCC still continue to certify BIPS programs. So what we're doing now is we're still collecting that information or those applications through the coalition's platform, and then we're sharing them with the BIPS committee. I know many members weren't able to be here today, so I think we're just going to do an extension of the programs that need certification today. But the committee members will review all of those documents and will decide on certification. Additionally, the BIPS programs do pay a fee for recertification or for certification. So what we're going to do with that is keep it in a separate account so that if there is a complaint against a BIPS program, if we do need to send someone out to monitor, members of the BIPS, the certification and monitoring committee can go and do that and get reimbursed by the coalition through that fund. We're just unable to do it with our grant funds. So for now, things will be continuing. But again, there's a big difference between an 85% of someone's staffing and 5%. So you might see a few changes in that, but thank you so much for being patient with us as we work out these new processes. That's all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Heskew. I have a couple of questions. Just want to make sure that understood. So based upon your statements, the council through the coalition will no longer be able to engage in BIPS training, will no longer be able to sponsor the annual conference, and there will also be no longer any ongoing monitoring of the currently certified BIPS programs to ensure that they're in compliance with the rules. Is that correct?
Well, we'll still be monitoring. They'll still have to submit a lot of paperwork proving that they are meeting those standards. They'll be submitting their policies, some files, answering a lot of questions that the committee will be reviewing. What we won't be able to do is to regularly send someone out on site as a coalition staff member to monitor.
And when you identified that they're going to be submitting paperwork, is there new paperwork that is being prepared to where they have to sort of certify that they're remaining in compliance? Do we need to look at amending the rules and bylaws of the council? Because the paperwork that is submitted now is for certification, and the certification, to my recollection, lasts 3 years. And so I'm not aware of any documentation that's required between certifications unless we create additional documents that indicate between those certifications. And so unless I'm wrong, then we could have an approved certified program that could go 3 years without any sort of accountability. Am I reading that wrong?
No, that you're correct. It would go, I actually, for some reason, I have 2 years in my head, but I could be wrong on that. Yeah, 2 or 3 years. But right, so no one would be going out on site. My understanding was that someone was only going on site as part of the recertification and monitoring, or like the recertification process, that when it became time, that then someone would go on site to monitor unless we received a complaint. So it would require, I believe in the certification kind of documents that people send in, they have to agree that they will be monitored at least once in that period, that someone will come on site in that period, and we would have to admit that.
Got it. Is Lana Frog on?
She's not able to attend today. She sent a message saying she would not be able to be here.
Okay.
So I think a lot of the committee was missing today is the other thing.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Yes.
Can
Chair
we,
recognizes Mr. Best.
as we as coalition members, could we go and monitor programs in our area?
Absolutely. So if people who are members of the council or members of the BIPS committee could absolutely go and monitor someone from a program from their in their community. Absolutely.
Yeah, I didn't want to
Okay.
speak out. I didn't want to speak out of turn, but it was my belief based upon being on this committee for a while that the BIPS programs are monitored annually, not just when there's a complaint, to make sure that they're in compliance, that they're, they have the correct number of members, they have the correct number of facilitators, they are meeting for the correct period of time. And that they're following the curriculum. And I understand that we're under short time constraints, but that was typically completed by members of the council anyway, as well as Ms. Fox, who I understand, I understand the funding issue. But if there's not going, my concern is as we continue, and I'm not saying we're going to come up with the answer today, but I certainly think it needs to be a continuing discussion of the council that if there's not going to be any ongoing accountability on an annual basis of the BIPS programs, then perhaps the committees and the executive committee needs to put together some additional documentation or at least something that requires a measure of paper accountability and perhaps some in-person accountability. I think what I'm hearing from you, Jennifer, is that the coalition is tapped as far as they can go in assisting that by rededicating some of Mr. Woosley's time to managing this part of the committee. Is that what I'm to understand?
That is
so,
correct.
So absent additional funding from the state of Tennessee, I understand the coalitions is federal funding, but absent some funding from the state of Tennessee or another federal entity, this council in reality doesn't have the physical ability to complete the task with which we're supposed to complete. And that's to ensure the safety and proper safety of victims and make sure the proper programs are in place, that rehabilitative programs are in place for perpetrators, correct?
Yes, so the council and the committee can set whatever standard. I mean, they can go through and set, the rules, or they can create a self-certification process, just that anything that they create will be unfunded. So that just needs to be thought through and how that's going to work. As I said, we will have some money that comes in through the application fees where we could use that to support things like some mileage if committee members needed it. It's not a large amount of money. But yes, so if they want annual monitoring, it's just that the committee themselves are going to have to be willing to do that because those are unfunded.
Absent additional funding.
Absent additional funding.
By the state.
Right. Yeah.
And did we have state funding? Did we have state funding that was ended?
So this was very interesting to me. So in the statute, they talked about the DVSCC. It says that you can pull from the Domestic Violence Education Fund, which I believe comes from some court fees. And as I stepped in, I was like, well, I guess that's what funds the DVSCC. I found out from OCJP that fund has never made more than $1,000 in a year. And that what had actually happened is that OCJP had taken some of its staffing budget and had given that money to the coalition to support a position around the DVSCC. And then, so an OCJP is the Office of Criminal Justice Programs. And then this year they were cut by just over that amount that they give the coalition. And so rather than cutting their own staffing, they instead had to cut that position through the coalition.
So realistically, we need to be speaking to members of the Tennessee legislature to increase funding for OCJP or increase. Because we can't do it through the coalition because the coalition, if your funding's federal and you have limitations, that your office, because it's funded by the Office, the Violence Against Women, you have some limitations about what you can do with your funding. So it had, while you're a pass-through, the funding from OCJP or some other organization has to be increased in order to adequately fund what's needed to do by the council, correct?
Yes, if the state wants to see that level of monitoring and accountability for VIPs, then it would need to be funded through the state.
Any additional questions or comments for Ms. Eskew? Seeing no hands and seeing no further statements, we'll move to the remaining committee reports. The first report is the Executive Committee report. Members of the Executive Committee, we met August the 7th of 2025 at 2 p.m. and discussed and approved today's agenda. It has been amended as we have, since we have met, and since Ms. Fox had to leave her position. But the newly elected slate of officers for the Executive Committee are myself as chair, Jenny Scott, Judge Jenny Scott as vice chair, Felix Vess as was the assistant secretary and treasurer. And of course, Ms. Fox was originally our treasurer, and as of August 15th, she is no longer with the commission, and Mr. Woosley is going to be stepping in that position as secretary treasurer for Ms. Fox. And because of the changes to the monitoring classes, we'll have to revisit the standards and rules. I think for the next agenda, we're going to have to revisit the Standards and Rules Committee on how we move forward based upon the limited funding to demonstrate the accountability. Okay. The next committee report is the Certification and Monitoring Review Committee. It's my understanding they did not meet this morning. Is that right, Ms. Eskew? We'll move forward to the Emerging Issues and Orders of Protection Committee. Chair Michelle Consiglio Young.
Good morning, everyone. Yes, we did meet this morning at 9, and we had a few things that we discussed. The first was an action item. Ms. Eskew had sent our committee the revised and updated bench cards that typically get distributed to judges and other people within the court system and others that frequently deal with domestic violence issues. Those bench cards include ones on ex parte orders of protection, firearms, orders of protection, and lifetime orders of protection, sexual assault, and stalking. We did not see any substantive changes that need to be made, but we do approve them for this committee, for the council, pursuant to the kind of word art pictures that are on the top. There's kind of a top bar on the front of each one of them, and some just have a generic photo or whatnot, that all of that be changed to just being a solid bright color rather than some arbitrary picture. So that was the only request from our committee, was that for the bench cards themselves are accurate, however, just to have those headers changed to a bright color, and that would be the approval from our committee on those. I do not believe this committee needs to vote on those. We just review and for content and everything, and all that looked fine. And I know the coalition and Jennifer, I know will explain this, and I think Brandon won't have an issue with it either, just changing that header, and that's it. So that was the decision from our committee on the bench cards. The second thing that we discussed was just an update. I gave an update on Public Chapter 253 from this past legislative session, which is the new process for approving qualified GPS companies and providers. This came out of the Debbie Marie Domestic Violence Act a couple years ago, but the statute requires the AOC to have a website with listed the qualified GPS providers. I reported that the AOC created that page. We have it up and going. We have a specific dedicated email address for local governments that approve the qualified providers to send the names to, and then we will post that on our website. This is a new law. It just went into effect in July. We only have one provider on the website so far, but we expect more to be coming in here this fall. But I just wanted to give that update because I know that this committee was well aware of that bill. So that is currently up on the AOC website, and I'll post that link in just a moment in the chat so everybody has it. And then the last thing that we talked about was a continuation from our June meeting on the possible addition of third-party contact information to the firearm dispossession form or firearms declaration form. And we had a very robust discussion, as we did in June, discussed the need, the desire to have that information on the form. We had many guests. We had several members of the public attend and also give their opinions and experiences with it, which is appreciated. And based on everything that we've discussed and the fact that there is a current legislative proposal out there in the legislature that was deferred to January, and there were some specific requests to our committee that the issue continue to be discussed over the fall with various stakeholders, including district attorneys, public defenders, the chiefs of police, sheriff's offices, the judges, all the various groups and the legislators, that this issue be deferred to our December meeting. And so that's what we did. And that's the end of my report for my committee.
Could you, for the members who are on this call, could you identify the members of your committee by name?
Sure. So on our committee, we've got myself, and I act as the chair, Sue Jones, Jennifer Eskew, who's not a voting member, but she's a member of the committee because of her role on the coalition, Felix Vess, Katie Neff, who is a new member, and she was unable to attend today, and Miss Michelle Mallory Johnson, who she's also a new member, and today was her first meeting.
Thank you so much for identifying those. Are there any, thank you, Michelle, for your report and to your committee for the work that's being done on the emerging issues and orders of protection. Does anyone have any questions for the chair of the committee? Hearing none, seeing none, we'll move now to our Training and Education Committee, which is co-chaired by Alana Tate and Ashley Parker. I see Ashley unmuting.
Yes,
Thank you,
hi.
Ashley.
Miss Tate couldn't be here today, so I'm gonna do the report. I don't have the ability to share, but there's only one, so I don't know if we want to go into it. There was one training. It was the Domestic Violence Overview Tennessee Judicial Commissioners Conference, and there was 125 participants, and that took place on August the 5th. That was the only one for that month. That's all I have.
Thank you, Ashley. I have a quick question. And so when we heard Ms. Eskew speaking earlier about that we won't be able to do the national conference or trainings, is trainings to, for example, the Judicial Commissioners Conference, is that something that's going to be able to continue to be provided? Do you know?
To be honest, I don't know. Ms. Fox just always sent us this and asked us to read it out during the meeting. We were not involved in gathering any of the information.
There was 125 participants at the Judicial Commissioners Conference.
That's correct.
All right. Thank you, Ashley, for your report.
I'm willing
and
to be more involved. I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm willing to be more involved and assist more with this if needed. I just need some guidance on what I need to do.
Thank you very much. I know we're all in kind of some changing times right now, so we're probably going to have a little bit of growing pains. Thank you for your work. Does anyone have any questions for the committee chair? Hearing none, seeing none. We will now go to any announcements. I have no additional announcements other than those that was noted by Ms. Eskew, and we'll continue to be monitoring what changes need to happen to the DSVCC and certainly probably the Rules Committee, the Standards and Rules Committee. We do have, I'll next move to public comments on our agenda. I believe we had 2 public comments. Is that correct, Ms. Eskew and Mr. Woosley?
I believe that is correct.
The first public comment we had was from Linda McFadden Ketchum from Davidson County. She's a volunteer with Moms Demand Action Tennessee, a national gun safety and gun violence prevention organization. Her statement was distributed to the members of the committee, but because it's not lengthy, I will read her statement during the public comments section. Good morning. My name is Linda McFadden Ketchum. I'm a Davidson County volunteer with Moms Demand Action Tennessee. We are a gun safety and gun violence prevention organization. Our organization supports updating the domestic violence firearms dispossessions form for A, orders of protection, and B, domestic violence misdemeanor convictions. Changing the form to include printed lines for the name and contact information of the third party holding the respondent's firearm would help the court and potentially be life-saving to victims. Courts should have the ability to verify that existing law is being followed and that a third party who is taking control of firearms is eligible to possess guns. We cannot implement the law or honor the system. This year, our volunteers have visited and observed orders of protection courts all over the state. To date, we have met with 13 judges, all of whom hear orders of protection cases. Many of the judges we met with told us that they think the third party's name and contact information should be required by the court. Judges in Scott, Wilson, Davidson, and Shelby counties have already taken the initiative and modified the form themselves. Other judges are speaking with colleagues about following suit. Some of the judges require respondents who do not submit the dispossession form to the court to come back and show cause why they have not complied. If they do not show up for court, law enforcement picks them up and brings them to court. From what we have observed, Tennessee judges want to do everything they can to separate domestic violence victims from their armed abusers. While we are glad to see judges making this important change, the DVSCC must provide clear guidance on this issue so that there is a statewide standard for courts to follow. The council should provide more protection for victims of domestic violence by updating the dispossession form to include the name and information of the third party taking hold of the abuser's firearms. If it is wrong to allow victims who have been granted an order of protection to leave the courtroom thinking their abuser will give up their guns, when the truth is that gaps in the dispossession form mean enforcement is often weak or non-existent. Updating the dispossession form is a small step towards safety of victims. You probably know that legislation was filed in the General Assembly last winter that would update the form. We're thrilled the General Assembly is interested in improving the form, but the change would not become effective until almost a year from now. If it should pass, victims cannot wait. You have the authority to help victims now by updating the form statewide and requiring every Tennessee domestic violence respondent or defendant to file the name and contact information of the third party holding their guns for them. Separating guns from dangerous people is one way we can save lives in Tennessee. Please improve the implementation of the existing legislation and update the dispossession form. The second comment that we have was provided by Alexandra Porto. She is Executive Director of Fayette Cares. Based upon the short length of her letter, though it was distributed, I will read it for the purposes of the record. Chair and members of the council, I respectfully urge the council to update the domestic violence firearms dispossession forms for both orders of protection and domestic violence misdemeanor convictions. As you know, Tennessee law requires that firearms be surrendered within 48 hours by any lawful means, such as transfer to a third party, which is not prohibited from possession. Yet the current forms provide no space to document who the third party is or to confirm their eligibility. Without this information, it's impossible for the courts to verify that dispossession has occurred in lawful and enforceable manner, leaving a dangerous gap in the compliance and accountability. by simply adding fields for the name and identifying the information of the third-party recipient. The forms would align with the statute, close a critical loophole, and provide courts with the tools they need to ensure lawful dispossession. Most importantly, the change enhances the safety of survivors in the broader community. I respectfully ask the council to take this straightforward but vital step to strengthen our state's response to domestic violence. Thank you for your time and commitment. Sincerely, Alexandra Porto, Executive Director, Fayette Cares. Are there any other public comments? Hearing none, seeing none, please note that all other public comments must be submitted to the Tennessee Coalition for Domestic Violence and Sexual Violence at least 2 weeks prior to the general body meeting to be included on the agenda and be included in the meeting. Our proposed meeting dates for 2026 include February, March 6, 2026, June 5th, 2026, Friday, September the 11th, 2026, and Friday, December 4th, 2026. The remaining meetings for 2025 is December 5th, 2025. Are there any other questions or comments from council members regarding anything in this morning's meeting?
Yes,
Hearing
Ms.
none.
Bean,
Yes,
this
Ms.
is
Davis.
Dorisha. Hearing about the form that the public comments were referring to, is that something that the council can implement before it goes into effect next year?
Well, first, it's got to be passed next year. I believe
Oh,
it's
okay.
it's been proposed into legislation. And so unless the legislation passes both houses, it wouldn't even go into effect next year.
Okay.
That's my understanding. But that's a great question. And I believe that that was part of what Ms. Consiglio Young was talking about, that is something that the council has been monitoring and are continuing to monitor. My office and my practice is in Wilson County. I am familiar with our General Sessions judge who primarily hears those orders of protection, who did modify his form and does require third parties who are a part of dispossession. He does require that information, and I'm happy to I'm happy to obtain and circulate that form that he utilizes. I think it might be important for and Ms. Consiglio Young may have already seen that form, but I think that's something that should be on the agenda in December. And let's see if we can maybe move that issue along based upon the public comments. And I know that the committees, the Emerging Issues and Orders of Protection Committee have been working on that, and we appreciate their work. Do you have any, would you support that, Ms. Davis?
Yes, ma'am, I would.
Okay. Based upon the comments, we'll make sure, Ms. Eskew, that that's added to the agenda. In the meantime, I will circulate Judge Hagan's form from Wilson County, and I'll circulate that to the Emerging Issues and Order of Protection hearing, and we'll see if we can get, we'll look at that a little bit closer at the December 5th meeting.
Thank you.
Any other comments from council members based upon the meeting this morning? Okay, I want to welcome our new members, and I want to welcome, invite back and thank our members who've been on the committee before. Our new members who are just joining us, unfortunately, you are joining us when we've had a little bit of a change in our structure, but we hope to continue the work on behalf of the DVSCC. And if you have any questions along the way, please reach out to us. All right, if there's no other comments from council members, hearing none, seeing none, I would like to thank you for your time and your work this morning, and I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.